you a very short overview of this first presentation. And again, we are going to have a lot of speakers, and so we'll try to move quickly through some of the presentations. The reason why it's so important to talk about measurement of financial literacy and financial capability is because we have witnessed all of these changes, probably the most dramatic one being the change in the pension landscape and this moving through to defined contribution pension. This is such a dramatic change if you think about this, because we are really putting people in charge of making decisions which are very complex. But these decisions are also due to the changes in the labor market. If the labor force is mobile, they need to bring their pension with them. That's why, in my view, these changes are not really reversible, and we are probably going to be dealing more and more to a situation where people are very much in charge of their financial well-being, but they are going to do it, and this is true across the world, facing very complex financial markets. So how well and how equipped are people to make this decision has become a very important policy question, and a critical part actually of the financial literacy strategy of a country, and the US has done as well actually a couple of these strategies, is to just measure the level of knowledge and capability of its population. Interestingly, there isn't normally such data in national surveys, and so that's why new survey and new data had to be created to measure financial capability. So today we are going to hear of these two data, and we are going to hear in particular about the financial capability study, about the American Life Panel, but I also want to mention the OECD, because once it becomes available, we have a third very important data to do policy analysis, and we have other sources of data. Actually, a lot of countries now have financial literacy in their survey, and I just, if you want to see some example, we have some outside. The country we have actually covered and that provided a lot of this data are as many as 8. We have a special issue of the Journal of Pension Economics and Finance. And what we have found, not only is that the result that we find in the US, and Chris in a moment will describe how financial literacy and financial capability looks like in the US, what I can tell you, these are very robust findings. These findings are actually not just true in the US, but they are true in other countries as well. And what we found is this striking similarity between countries and across country about who are the vulnerable group and where financial literacy is so low. Very interestingly, I can tell you that in all of these countries, and irrespective of whether it is Sweden or Italy or Russia, women have answered in the very same way to the financial literacy question. So there is a clear gender difference in financial literacy, which in my view is an important topic to study, and we are actually doing some work on that part as well. I want to turn to PISA for a moment, because very soon we are going to have data across countries about how much 15 years old know about financial literacy. This is actually what the OECD, PISA, and not just financial literacy, but what they aim to collect, aim to get when they collect their data. So this is actually what they want to do when, for example, they collect data about math, they collect data about capacity to read, and so on. And I actually want to read it because I say, are students well prepared for future challenges? Can they analyze, reason, and communicate effectively? Do they have the capacity to continue learning through life? Every 3 years, PISA assesses to what extent students near the end of compulsory education have acquired some of the knowledge and skill essential for full participation in society. In other words, financial literacy, like math and science and capacity to read, is a life skill. And if I had to use a definition of financial literacy or financial capability, I actually think that this one does a really good job. And I think I particularly want to stress the last part, where financial literacy is really important for full participation in society. And I want to remind you that, for example, in a lot of countries in Europe, there have been elections where voters have been asked to give an opinion about, for example, austerity packages, economic reform. And it's just so critically important that people really have some basic to understand what's happening in their life. So again, we have a big task of interpreting the data. And so in this morning, and that's why we really had this session in the morning, not just because I have a special preference for Olivia, which I do, which is that we have to recognize that financial literacy is a form of human capital. So we'll tell you in a little bit what we mean by that. We'll show you that it can generate large differences in wealth, and it has a lot of important policy implications. So I wanted to give you this overview really to introduce to this first part, which is, I think, a really important and I would say introductory part to our conference. Let's talk about the data and let's talk about the theory first, and then we can really think about what we can do to address the finding we are going to see now. Ari.